What's up, everybody? Madcuz Brad here, or Brad Weir. You might know me one way or the other with Pro Tabletop. So as we get ready for ninth, I want to start doing some breaking down some units, how they compare to each other, some changes we might be seeing, and things like that. So today I'm going to be talking about the heavy hitter Shining Spears that you know in the Craftworld Eldar and Wraithblades. I'm a huge Wraithblades fan, so I want to give these guys some love because I think that they are going to make a comeback in ninth from what we know already. And I think that there's just going to be some wiggle room in there for them. So let's kind of get into it. Let's go over my thoughts, raw stats and stuff from one unit to another, and just kind of see what you guys think at the end of this. So first, let's start off with some Shining Spears. So with the Shining Spears, their raw stats are pretty known and everything, so let's just hit this real quick. So their movement is 16 inches, they've got a weapon skill and ballistic skill of 3+, strength 3, T4, 2 wounds, 2 attacks, leadership 8, and they have a 3-up save. They also have a 4-up invuln in shooting only, and we'll kind of get through their strengths and weaknesses in a second here. Then you look at their guns. They have, the Shuriken catapults, which are 12 inches. You're going to get 4 shots each. So if you're running a max squad, you're getting 36 shots. They're only strength 4. So usually these are really only good if you're guided and you're doomed. They don't have any AP unless you're getting 6s. So they're kind of swingy. You can usually do pretty good if you have full rerolls. And then you've got your laser lances, which are only 6-inch range. So you got to run up on people to get these even more. So pretty much if you're in charging range, you're going to be, shooting everything. These do have an AP of -4, so they're going to shred stuff. Obviously, if people have invulns and stuff like that, they're not as good, but getting to somebody's 4-up or 5-up invuln is definitely better than them taking a 2-up or 3-up save. Everything counts. And they're flat 2 damage. Flat damage is always good because then you're not rolling to just be like, oh, what is the damage? So they have a lot of shooting, and then when they go into melee, they've got 2 attacks. There are ways to give them 3 attacks with craft worlds and things like that, but let's just say they have 2 attacks each. Similar thing, they're going to be strength 6 on the charge. You could get a Exarch who has a strength 8 weapon. So against certain things that are high in toughness, they do struggle to wound a little bit, like against vehicles and things like that. So unless that vehicle is doomed, you're most likely not going to get too much stuff through for hitting and wounding, and they're not going to have really any rerolls unless they're rerolling ones from like an Autarch or something like that in combat. So most likely you're hitting on 3s with no rerolls because usually they're going to be super far away from anything that can reroll, and then you're going to be wounding on, against higher target toughness 5s. Maybe you're rolling everything if they're doomed. Against other things, you're going to be wounding on 3s usually, sometimes 2s, but mainly 3s. And typically in combat, this is going to mitigate a lot of invulns that are only in shooting and stuff like that. So it's going to shred through stuff. It's going to be flat 2 damage. They can do a lot of hurt. Then we jump over to the Wraithblades. I'm going to be talking about the Wraithblades with the shields only. I'm not going to be touching on the ones with the swords because I think the only way that these are viable is if you take them with the shields. So these guys are way different, right? Their movement only 5 inches. Their weapon and ballistic skill is exactly the same. Their strength is going to be 5, so they're definitely stronger. Their toughness is 6, and I think this is a huge point as T6. They're 3 wounds instead of 2, so now you're getting more wounds out of this unit. And they're 2 attacks, so their attacks are the same right now, and they have a little bit higher leadership. Their save is the same. They also have a 4-up invulnerable save with the shield, and it's all the time. It's not just in shooting, and that is huge because spears not having it in combat is a detriment to them. Then you look at these guys' weapons. They don't have any shooting. All they have is they're going to have their Ghost Axe, which is going to be strength +2, so you're going to have a strength 7 weapon at -3 AP, D3 damage, and you're going to be subtracting 1 from this on the hit rolls. There are ways to mitigate that with psychic powers to give them an additional +1. There's also ways to give them full rerolls in combat or rerolling 1s. So they do have a lot of reroll potential as well, which we will touch on as we kind of talk about their strengths and weaknesses and their craft worlds that you can take them. So that's kind of how these guys are. Their AP is pretty close in combat. Their damage is about the same. I'd say you average about the same, but their strength is way higher. They don't deteriorate if they stay in combat, and they are way harder to kill. So now if we go and we look at some of the strengths and weaknesses of the Shining Spears, which I kind of touched on, so let's go through their strengths. They're super fast. You can move 16 inches, you can quicken them, you're across the board, you're going to get a charge off, you're going to be touching something, shooting something turn 1 most of the time. They have a 4-up invulnerable save, which is really good, but it's only in the shooting. And yes, you can protect them to give them a 3-up invuln, but once you get into combat, and if you don't kill what you're in combat, or there's something else that's even grosser in combat, like a possessed bomb, even getting stomped on by like a knight, things like that definitely hit you back really hard and are most likely going to just wipe you out if you don't wipe them out. So it's really hard to stay alive in combat if you do not kill what you are going for with them. They do have lots of shooting, which is great. Shooting is, combat's hard because you can never guarantee you're going to get a charge. You might lose some stuff in Overwatch, even with the changes. So having a lot of shooting is really good. Flat 2 damage weapons, also really strong. You don't have the random 1s or the 3s and stuff like that, so you just know that it's going to do that. Now, where that is a negative is going to be against like 3 wound models, because it's going to take 2 guys to kill every single one potentially, where if you have like D3, it's probably going to take 2 anyways, but could potentially only take 1. So that's where the weakness might shine through a little bit. And then they're multi-wound models. They're 2 wounds each, so they're a little bit harder to pick up. Now, their weaknesses, as I talked about, their invuln is only in the shooting phase, which is really, really one of my personal drawbacks. If they had it in the combat phase, even if they had a 5-up in the combat phase, like I would go for these guys all the time over and over again. I think they'd be so much stronger, but not having an invuln in close combat just leaves them very, very weak in one of their strongest phases. And then they're not always strong if they're not charging. If you go into combat and then you are in combat on that next turn, on that the next player's turn, you're hitting at strength 3. So now anything that is T6 to T8, you're wounding on 6s, they're going to do nothing. So now you're saying that their second round of combat, they're only going to be useful against infantry guys who are strength 3, even strength 4, just fighting against Space Marines. Or sorry, toughness 4, going against Space Marines, they're wounding on 5s. Like, that's not good when you're just sitting there in combat. So they're really only good on shooting and charging. They're not good at just sit in combat and hold there. They're most likely going to die. They're most likely not going to do a lot of stuff. The other thing with them is they do need a lot of buffs to make them strong. You've got to protect them to make them stay alive against shooting. You've got to quicken them to get them across the board. You can enhance them to give them +1 to hit if you want to. You can give them +1 to wound, which makes them a little bit better, right? So there is a lot of buffs that go into it, and now you're going super into these psychers where a lot of your list is psychic stuff to support the spears, which is fine because that is how Eldar shines, is with all these psychic powers to buff their units. So it's okay that you invest in all these units to buff stuff, but when you're buffing a unit that is probably going to die in close combat if you don't kill what you're fighting, it's really unfortunate. Or they're just going to be left hanging out to dry and then get shot at or charged and fought in that next turn. So that is kind of why I lean away from Shining Spears recently, and I think going into 9th I'll lean away from them even more. Now, when we look at the strengths and weaknesses of the Wraith Blades, they have some special stuff that I really like. So they're always going to be strong in close combat. They are not weak. So you got these strength 7 in close combat all the time. That's always going to put out damage. They're -3 AP, they're D3 damage. They're always going to hit you like a truck. And now you're talking about going up against like T6, you're wounding on 3s, T7, you're wounding on 4s, T8, you're wounding on 5s. So yes, it does kind of start to, follow that same trend, but I would not use Wraith Blades to be taking out bigger units. I would be using them for board control. I would be using them to have just this line of you don't want to come near me kind of threat. They have a 4-up invuln all the time. So now you protect them, they have a 3-up invuln. These are dudes with 3 wounds with effectively storm shields all the time. And you fortune them, which you can do with the spears as well, and they have a 5-up feel no pain. So now you've got these 3 wound T6, 3-up invuln, 5-up feel no pain models. You put 10 of those on the field, that's 30 wounds they have to chew through at 3-ups, 5-ups. That is rough to deal with. And they're T6. So now you're saying, all these armies out there that have these heavy bolter fire armies where it's just mass shots. Well, against the spears, they're wounding on 4s. And then they have these T5 weapons as well that have a lot of shots, or even T6. Now they're wounding the spears on 3s. And now you look at the Wraith Blades and you go, oh, you're wounding on 5s, you're wounding on 5s, you're wounding on 4s. So unless they have something that's basically strength 8 shooting at you, they're wounding on 4s or 5s all the time, which is way better than 3s. So really, really big plus there to keep them alive even more. And then you look at combat, it's the same situation. A lot of units don't have strength that can deal with that. Even if you look at just the spears, usually they'd be wounding on 3s. They'd be wounding these guys on 4s if they're fighting them. And now they got to chew through these wounds. So the max you're going to kill is maybe 2 guys in combat with the spears, if you're lucky, depending on how saves and throws and everything like that goes. So I think they're really, really hard to kill. Now you look at how they're weak though. They are very slow. They only move 5 inches. They have no shooting, and they need buffs as well, just like the spears do. So either way, you're going to need buffs, and that's kind of what you get into when you take units like this with Eldar. Is you're going to be looking to buff them up and everything like that. So that kind of is a wash across the board. Now they're slow, yes, but they can also move through walls. They're infantry, so you can move them 5 inches. You can advance them. You can spend a CP and auto advance them 6 if you need to get up the board. You can quicken them for another 5 and then advance them again with that. So you can get this really good positioning in turn 1, so then you have a threat the rest of the game. You can also keep them off the board and deep strike them. And with the rules that we saw coming into 9th, and this is where I think it's really interesting, where if an enemy is on your battle edge, we don't know what that is yet, but let's just say it's somewhere in your deployment. Now you got these 10 Wraith Blades that are off the board. They deep strike in. They are automatically in combat in your deployment zone. They're this huge defensive shielded unit that then just destroy anything in your unit, and now you can push back out. So I think that they have a lot of strengths and a lot of versatility on how they can play. And you can do a lot of that with the spears as well, and they do have an advantage for movement. But what I'm really looking at here with the Wraith Blades is I'm looking at survivability. I'm looking at a unit that stays alive and hits like a truck every single turn and just moves across your board and threatens you, and you have to shoot at them. And now you're shooting at them, and they're really hard to kill. So now you're wasting all your shooting at them and ignoring the rest of my army. And you pair them with something like an Avatar of Khan, who they're re-rolling their charges. They are always passing morale and stuff like that. Now, it doesn't matter if they kill half of them in a turn, you still got 5 guys there that are a huge threat. And now as we move into the craft worlds to kind of see how they become even more of a threat and how they compare to each other, it becomes even more of an eye-opener. So let's start with the Wraith Blades because that's who we're talking about. There are multiple ways to run them. There's 2 ways that I'm going to really kind of hit on that I would run these. One is at, I have no idea how to say this craft world, so I'm just going to say Ioden. So if you're running them as Ioden, basically what you get is you could take a relic for once a game to double their attacks. So if you feel like there is a unit or a model on the table that you just need to eliminate, you can now double their attacks, right? We'll talk about how many attacks I can get up to in a second. So base, these guys in combat are going to have 2 attacks. You're always, no matter what, if you run them, you're going to spend a CP and you're going to take them as a Wraith host. Because then every time you're in combat, you can spend a CP and you can get +1 to your attacks. So now they have 3 attacks. They also get another additional attack on their charge. So now you're at 4 attacks. So a squad of 10 of these, you're looking at 40 attacks at strength 7, -3 AP, D3 damage, base, right? And that's with 1 CP spend. Like, no big deal. Now you can take them with the Ioden. You can double those attacks. Now you have 80 attacks for one time in a game. So if you're going up against, like, let's say a possessed bomb, or let's say a knight and you can touch 2 knights or anything like that, you just want to be like, I want to eliminate whatever I'm going to fight, no questions asked. Or you want to split your attacks, right? You touch 2 things and you want to kill both of them. You put 40 attacks one way, 40 attacks another. Yes, you're going to take D3 mortal wounds after, but whatever. Assume you have fortune on them. It's not going to kill a guy, probably. If it does, who cares? You just destroyed something. So super, super strong. And you can do that as a defensive. You can do that as coming out of deep strike and charging. You can just walk up the board and do it. Really, really strong. Another way, if you want a little bit more inconsistent, or like I guess you could say, consistency, is you can take them with other craft worlds, such as like Hunters of the Ancient Relic and Wraith of the Dead. So Wraith of the Dead is going to allow them to always re-roll wounds of 1, and then Hunters of the Ancient Relic is going to make them a force to reckon with when they're guarding an objective, because now they're going to get another extra attack every time they're on an objective. So if you have a squad of 10 of these, that's 50 attacks all the time while they're on an objective. That's pretty crazy. And the other thing with these guys is you can have a Spirit Seer with them to reroll 1s to hit, and then if something is doomed, they'll be rerolling all their wounds, which is going to be super important against stronger stuff. But there is a lot of things where, because they're strength 7, you're going to be wounding on 2s or wounding on 3s, so it's not the end of the world if they're not doomed. And then with the Ioden craft world as well, the Spirit Seer, you can extend the range for a CP to 12 inches and you can reroll all hits. So now they're hitting on 4s, but they're rerolling all of your hits. So that's really, really big for them. So you're going to have 80 attacks, re-rolling everything, and then whether it's doomed or not, hopefully it doesn't matter. Maybe one of them is doomed and you're re-rolling some or the other, but like they're going to melt something. And after that point, if they die, do you really care? Because they just did their job. And yes, they do suck CP, but you're getting 12 CP to start most of the time right now with what we're looking at in 9th, and then you're going to get a CP every single turn. So like you have the CP to fuel these guys. And if you really want even extra CP, you could throw in there, maybe a patrol of Ynnari and have, 5 ups to get you CP back. Or you could even just take, an Autarch and 6 ups get your CP back. So there is ways for you to get even more CP. I think they're going to be super strong. They're going to be a human shield or ghost shield, whatever you want to say they are, walking up the board that are really hard to kill and have a lot of attacks. And then you look at the spears, and really the ways that I see to take them is you're going to want, same thing, either Hunters of the Ancient Relic, and you're going to want them being super aggressive to go and take the enemy's objective, and giving them 3 attacks each then to basically confirm objectives on the enemy side of the board. Headstrong, which is you could take on both of them, which is +1 to your charge, but probably not something you'll take with the way that 9th is. You're not going to have as many detachments probably. And then you have Hail of Doom and Superior Shurikens. So adding 4 inches range to Shurikens is okay, but most of the times with spears you're going to be charging anyways, so you're going to be within that 12 inches. So what I would rather look at is the Hail of Doom and make all my Shurikens on them -1 AP so that they have a better chance of doing more damage, even they're harder to hit, harder to wound, so give them a better chance of getting those wounds through when they do wound. So that's kind of what I think for the Wraith Blades and the spears. I am a huge fan of the Wraith Blades and what they're going to be bringing to the table for 9th. I played spears all through 8th, and I am going to be shelving them for now, and I think that everybody should be doing test games with these 2 units when we fully know the rules for 9th to really decide what you like more. And yes, there is a world where you run both of them, right? And maybe that is a perfect case scenario, is you run both of them, but then you're going to lose out on some of your artillery and heavy shooting and stuff like that. So that's my thoughts right now on Wraith Blades versus Spears. Let me know below in the comments what you're thinking, who you're favoriting, and how you think the 9th rules are going to come into effect for these 2 units. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Brad with Pro Tabletop. Peace out.